Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our little waste-free cooking section on our big Earth Day event here. So excited to have you joining in. My name is Amy and I work with Marion, Polk Food Share. I'm the Community Garden and Education Program Coordinator for the Food Share. So I get to help coordinate a bunch of community gardens and also help organize gardening and cooking classes through Marion and Polk counties. And so today I'm really excited to talk to you about something I feel very passionate about, which is wasting nothing if we can. And so we're going to talk about how to do that in the kitchen today. And I know a lot of you are probably cooking a lot more than you usually do right now, as we're all kind of stuck at home. And so if we can figure out how to do that and make the most of all that we have and not throw our extra ingredients away, that would be wonderful. So I'm here at my home, and it's obviously not a commercial kitchen, so we're going to do our best, and excited to have you along for the ride. And I'm wearing my lovely apron that my little sister made me for Christmas. It's called Amy the Chef. So I wanted to start off with a couple of just general tips about how to use all that you have and waste as little as possible while you're in the kitchen. And so in general, just having the mindset of I'm not ever going to throw anything away in the trash can. I'm going to try and use everything that I have, all of the utensils, all of the containers, all of the food that I have as much as I possibly can, and the trash can is very last resort. And so to do that, if you are buying lots of packaged items, you're going to have to get really creative. So the first step would be to try to buy things with less packaging, and that would be very helpful in starting to reduce the amount of waste that you're producing as an individual consumer in your food purchases. So buying things with less packaging, but then also if you do have to buy something in a package, see how far you can stretch that package and use it again and again. Maybe you can repurpose the jars and make pickles in them. Maybe you can repurpose plastic bags and buy bulk items in them from the grocery store. As you can see here, I have a bunch of plastic bags hanging on a little drying rack above my sink. They're just clothespined onto a string, so I reuse plastic bags again and again if I have those. And all of the plastic containers and clamshells, if you can reuse those as many times as possible, that would be good, so that you don't have to be adding to the amount of plastic that's getting thrown away. So buying things with less packaging, reusing, and then also, I kind of mentioned this, but buying in bulk if you can and when you can would be wonderful. You can just use if the store allows it, you can bring your own jars or your own containers with you, and those you can fill up with however much you need, and you don't have to, that helps you to not waste the items that you're buying, because you're buying only what you need and that's it. So that's a good place to start. Also, shopping local and buying fresh as often as you can is really helpful to support a local economy, and is really good for our local farmers, especially right now during this virus. Our farmers are very affected, and they need our support and our help to be going to the farmers markets. Many of them are still open, and we can buy our groceries there. Most times if you go to the farmers market, you're going to see far less packaging than you would at the grocery store. So try to support those places and be purchasing your fruits and vegetables locally, and meats and eggs and cheeses and dairies and all of those things too you can buy at the farmers market. So your support is still really critical for those farmers. And then really you're going to want a compost pile if you don't have one of those already, a compost container on your countertop. We at our house, we just use this little cookie jar looking thing that we found at a thrift store, and we just throw all of our food scraps in while we're cooking, and that makes it really easy. So then once it's full, then we take it out to our backyard compost pile. We feed some of it to our chickens, and that is our easy way of making sure we're not throwing any food scraps away. If you don't have space at your house or your apartment or wherever you live to have a compost pile, you can often, if you participate in one of the community gardens, you can bring you can save up all your food scraps and bring your food scraps to the community garden compost pile and dump it there. You can also, if you get your waste picked up by the city or the municipal services, you can throw all of your food scraps in the yard waste bin, and that way, if you do have any extra food scraps, you can still get it taken care of by putting it in the yard waste bin, and it gets composted and turned back into soil and usable material instead of just putting it into the landfill. So those are a few tips. When it comes to cooking with food scraps, I'm just going to turn this, water is boiling, I'm going to turn it way down. When it comes to cooking, you have to really start to think creatively. So start to feel comfortable putting away the recipe books and using them more as a guide instead of something to follow exactly. And that of course depends, if you're baking or cooking, the recipe is more important in some of those instances. But start to get comfortable with substituting things. Like if a recipe calls for kale but you only have Swiss chard, that's a perfectly fine substitute. Or if it calls for parsley and you only have cilantro, that might work to substitute what you have. So start to feel more creative in the kitchen, and that helps a lot with decreasing waste, because if you already have something in your refrigerator and you go out to the store to buy the perfect fit for your recipe that you want to make, now you have two things, and you're going to have to work really hard to make sure the other thing doesn't go bad. So you can use whatever you have in order to make sure that you use the whole thing instead of going to get something specific. Also have some go-to recipes or cooking methods that you can use that are going to help you to sort of use whatever you have that's about to go bad, or that you're not sure how you're going to use it, that you can easily just throw everything in and it's gonna work out in this kind of a recipe. So things like soups and pickles and smoothies and stir fries and roasted vegetables and things like that. Have some of those things on hand, and we're going to talk about a few examples today that you can use that are going to help you to get comfortable. Whatever you have that's about to go bad, you can put it into one of those things. And then also getting comfortable with different food preservation techniques is important. So if you happen to buy 3 loaves of bread that's on sale, how can you, are you going to eat all 3 at once, or are you going to have to put 2 in the freezer? And the bread can keep perfectly fine in the freezer. Or if you had a huge sale on bananas at the grocery store, are you going to be able to freeze some of them so that they don't all turn brown? Are you going to be able to turn them into different baked goods and things like that? So start to think about some of these different food preservation techniques. Do you know how to pickle? Do you know how to dehydrate your foods? And we'll continue talking about that throughout the course of this video. So one thing that I was going to make sure that everybody knows how to prepare is just a soup stock. And I am a veggie eater, so I'm making a vegetable stock, but you can also very easily make a chicken stock or a beef stock for soups, or even for just cooking for other purposes besides soup. So I've got a pot on the stove and the water's already boiling. The pot that I have is very handy for making stock because it has this strainer on the inside, which is really helpful because what I'm gonna do is throw all of my scraps into the water and inside the strainer, and then it's gonna be really easy to just lift out later when the stock is done, and I'll just have the stock and that's it. So I have the top of a leek here that I'm not gonna use for anything else, and so I'm gonna put that in my stock. And really this is gonna be, there's no recipe that I'm following. I'm just putting whatever vegetables that I have left over that I enjoy, that I think are gonna go well in this soup stock. And we'll just give it time for all the flavors to cook and boil together. And by doing that, we're gonna make a really flavorful broth that's gonna go really well in whatever soup I decide to make later, whether it's gonna be just a vegetable soup or whether it's gonna be maybe like a butternut squash bisque because I have some squash that I need to eat. I've got here some radish greens. Radish greens aren't my favorite flavor to eat raw, but some people really enjoy having radish greens in their salads, or making a pesto out of them, or you can even saute them. But I'm going to just go ahead and throw the radish greens in the soup because that's my favorite way to have them. I had a big lovely bulb of fennel earlier this week that I prepared. I sauteed it, it was delicious, but now I have all these fennel fronds, the tops of the fennel, that I'm not going to eat probably, so I'm going to throw them in my stock, and it's going to give it a really nice, beautiful licorice-y flavor. And I also have these carrot tops, and I am going to use some of them for something I'm going to make in a second here with us, but I'm going to take a couple of them because I won't need them all. Throw them in the stock. And I also have just a funny amount of cilantro left from something that I made earlier this week, and I think it would be great to just use it up, and it's kind of starting to wilt, so before it goes bad I'm going to stick it into my stock pile. Make sure that it's all covered up with the water. Oh, I forgot I was gonna have some garlic peels that I had from something else, and I'm gonna put those in there. And also over the summer, I had saved up a lot of greens that I thought I was gonna use a little more diligently over the winter, and I didn't. So I have these frozen, it's frozen Swiss chard, and I'm gonna stick that in my stock to just get a lot of vitamins and nutrients in there and get all those flavors to meld, and at the same time I'm getting some more space in my freezer, which is wonderful. And then you can go ahead and salt your stock, your vegetables in the stock as well, and just, you know, putting a little a couple teaspoons or a couple tablespoons in there. And I'm also going to put some pepper in there. I love pepper. But you can go ahead and get really creative and really use whatever you've got. If you have an extra chicken bone or a carcass of something else you ate, you can save that. If you have a ham bone, if you have a beef bone, you can boil that as well. And you can even still throw in all the vegetables that you have that are about to go bad. And those will still be delicious in your broth, even if you do make a meat-based broth. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that, let it simmer medium-low. And really it's best if it simmers for a couple of hours. It makes a really good broth if you let it go for a while. But just the other day I made a quick veggie stock like this using scraps that I had around, and I was kind of in a hurry because we were all hungry and ready to eat, so I made a super quick one, and it was about 30 minutes, and then I added all the vegetables in to make a really nice hearty vegetable soup, and the stock was still delicious even after only 30 minutes. So however long you can let it go, it's good. You can even let it sit all day in a crock pot, is another easy way to do it. And that is a good base. You can store it in jars when you're done and keep it in the refrigerator, and it lasts for at least a week, and you can use it in your, like if you're cooking soup, or if you're making a stir fry or something, pouring a little bit in as just sort of a richer, more flavorful addition to what you're cooking than just adding water. So that's soup stock. I'm going to also make some pesto. Well, most times when you think of a pesto recipe, you think of basil, but there's so many other good, delicious ways that you can eat pesto. I was just talking about the fennel greens, the fennel fronds that I put in the soup stock, but earlier this week we made some fennel pesto because we had so many fronds and the greens, and we wanted to use some of those up, so we tried making a pesto out of fennel, and it turned out really delicious. It had kind of a sweeter taste than some of the basil is a little more intense of a flavor, more savory, and so it was kind of fun to have a sweet one, and we were dipping carrots and pretzels in it, and it was delicious. So I'm going to mostly use carrot tops for this pesto, because a lot of us get these carrot tops and we're like, what am I going to do with those? Our chickens do love the carrot tops, so sometimes it's not a big bummer if we have extra carrot tops around, because the chickens will eat them, and that's wonderful too. But if we can eat them, that's even better. So I'm going to take these. Sometimes I'll take the carrot tops and chop them up real fine and small and throw them into a salad. I even have thrown them into soup before as well, and they're delicious. I really enjoy them. I'm personally not too picky about the stems. I'm going to try to blend them up real fine, but I keep my stems in there too. The stems have still a lot of nutrients and flavor, and if you can get them chopped up pretty small, then that'll be good. I'm going to throw in a few of the greens from the radishes as well, and we are going to have nothing left with these radishes, that's going to have to go in the trash. It's going to be great. Usually with pesto, you want to add some kind of a nut. I often use sunflower seeds. I think a traditional pesto recipe calls for pine nuts. Those are very expensive, so I don't often buy those. When I do have them, they're a great treat, a delicacy, but I usually go for sunflower seeds. I often have pumpkin seeds, which is what I'm going to use today. Walnuts are really good in pesto, but it's kind of nice to have some kind of seed or nut to help with the creaminess and to add even more flavor to the dip. So I'm going to put some pumpkin seeds. I'm not much of a measurer, so I'm just going to dump maybe, I'm going for like a half a cup or something with how many greens I put in there. And then you'll want to put some kind of citrus or acid in there. If I don't have a lemon around, I've used apple cider vinegar before, and that usually turns out just fine. Try to get some of these seeds out. I'm really relishing the Meyer lemons that are in season right now. I've been having them in my water every morning. Squeeze in some lemon. And I love my stuff to be very garlicky, so I am putting 4 cloves in. Some people might prefer to put fewer cloves in, but I've got my 4 cloves of garlic that are going in there. And then salt again, and oil. So this is another example of reusing. This used to be like a blended oil bottle, and I put tape over it that says olive, and I take it now to the grocery store and I get bulk olive oil, and so I can just clean out my container every time, and when I go to the store I can fill it up with the olive oil from the store, or I'll bring a jar with me that's clean and I'll bring it back home and refill this bottle so I don't have to keep buying more and more bottles of olive oil. Just a little side note. I'm going to be generous here with olive oil. It helps it blend better in there, and also it's easier to put as like a dressing on top of things. I know a lot of people eat pesto on top of meats or in pasta. I even like to put it as like a spread on like a piece of bread or a sandwich or something. And oftentimes I just cook vegetables with it. Add a little bit of a pinch of salt, maybe about a teaspoon or so. And we will see what this does. We'll start to blend it. There's a lot of other accoutrements that you can add to your pesto, but we're going to start with this and see how it goes. There's going to be a loud noise. feel that it is going to need a little more liquid, so I'm going to start with a lemon. Add a little more lemon in there. My peel's going in the compost. There's probably other creative ways that I could have used that peel besides compost. Like I could have flavored my next drink with that, or I could have just tried roasted lemon the other day. It was so good. You can also candy the peels. There's a lot of ways that you could use your rinds and peels besides throwing them away. And I will add a little more oil. I was just learning today too how to make, it's called emerald oil, which you can make using, if you have a bunch of herbs left over, you can make emerald oil, which is, you blanch the greens, so you blanch the herbs, and then you blend them up just like we're doing here, and start to add slowly oil to the herbs, and it gets this like beautiful green color like you see here, and then you strain out all of the little herb bits, and you wind up with this like beautiful green oil that you can use for whatever kind of cooking you're doing. But this will be nice too. The fiber will be a nice addition to keep everything in there. So now I'm going to try to blend it again and see what we come up with for the texture. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to pull some out here and see how we're doing. Yum! This is going to be great on some pasta, or maybe just use it as a dip. Might put it on my toast with an egg in the morning. Oops. There's so many ways to eat pesto. And also, if I made too much, and it's going to be too much to eat, let me pull this out of my freezer. I had some pesto from when the basil was fresh in the summer. We made a bunch of pesto and put them in little ice cube trays, so they're little tiny pesto nuggets. And we popped them out of the ice cube trays once they were frozen, froze them in these little bags, and every time we were feeling hungry for pesto, just pull it out of the freezer, and one little nugget or two little nuggets was good enough for the recipe that we were trying to prepare. So this is another good way if you are trying to make a ton of something and you don't know how you're going to possibly eat it all. There's so many creative ways that you can freeze or store it for later. So this is our finished pesto. Some people like it a little more runny. I personally don't mind. Mine to be a little thicker, and you can always add more oil later or something. That would be a good way to thin it out. So that's pesto, which is a fun way to use as a lot of greens. As you can see, we had all these greens and it reduced down to this little amount of pesto, so it's a good way to use up something really quickly and a good way to get more greens into your diet. Now, let's see here. Next, with a few minutes we have left, I was going to show, I know a lot of people probably have bananas that oftentimes turn brown, look a little bit like this. These ones I just pulled out of the freezer a little bit ago. They were already turning brown, and so I had thrown them in the freezer. A big bag of bananas I must have had some kind of sale, and I got a bunch of bananas, but we couldn't use them very quickly, so I froze them thinking I'll make banana bread later or something. So I was gonna offer a fun little alternative to banana bread. So I pulled these out of the freezer and thawed them out, and I'm going to make banana pancakes. It's pretty slimy, but You'll take the banana out of its peel, and I mentioned as well that I have chicken, so I often have a lot of eggs, which is a fortunate thing. But usually when I make banana pancakes, it's a good way to use a lot of eggs as well. Usually it's 1 banana to 2 eggs is the ratio that I like to use. And so I just will crack the eggs right in there with the banana. So 1 banana to 2 eggs. And I'll start off with mixing that together. And making sure that the banana is all nice and mushed up and mixed in with that egg. Those 2 eggs. Ooh, little piece of the banana butt. So mixing that up. And you could just stop there and fry those, but I like to kind of add a few little things to mine. I'm going to start my cast iron pan here so that it heats up and it's ready to fry. Because I'm preparing something that's going to turn out kind of sweet, I'm going to use some coconut oil, which is one of my favorite oils to cook with, especially at high heat. So I'll put some of that in the pan as it warms up. And I'm going to add a bit of almond milk. This is another thing, I don't often have almond milk around, and I don't drink it very quickly, so I was kind of itching to get some of this used up. I tasted it, it's still okay, even though it's not past the sell-by date, but it has been in there for a little while, so I tried it and it's still good, and there's no signs of it going bad yet. So I'm going to be excited to use some of this in my banana pancakes. And so I've got almond milk in there, and you could use any kind of flour, but I'm going to use almond flour in my pancakes here, which will be a nice high protein addition. We've got eggs and almonds. Going to be raring to go in the morning. I'm just going to do a couple scoops of this flour, and we'll just kind of see what texture we come up with. And it'll just be to, the texture will be to my liking, so nothing too specific here. Also going to add, if you have vanilla and you wanted to add vanilla, you could do that. I don't think I have vanilla, so I'm not going to do that. I will add a bit of salt. And add some cinnamon. And I might also add some arrowroot powder. You don't have to use that, but I have arrowroot and I like using it, and also I'm needing to use it up. So I'm going to use some of that in this recipe. You could also throw in a little bit of baking powder. I'm not going to because I don't have any at the moment. So this is, as you can see, it's a very makeshift, like, what have we got? Let's make it happen. A little sprinkle of this. Okay, so it's coming together. It's looking kind of like pancake batter. Whoop. Just getting it all mixed in. Beautiful. So here's how my batter looks. There we go. And it looks like my pan is all heated up, the oil is melted. So we'll go ahead and just pour a little bit in there. So it's like a pancake. It's going to be a big pancake. Beautiful. Okay, so we'll wait for that, and while that's finishing up, we will quick check on the stack and see how that's going. It smells really delicious. The vegetables are all looking very wilty in there, and I can see that the broth has started to change colors a little bit. It's slightly, greenish, yellowish. But I'm gonna have to let that go for a little while longer before it's finished. And that will make probably our supper later tonight. But I'm starting to see some bubbles appear on the top of this pancake. Ooh, not quite done yet. While we're waiting, I was just gonna say too, if you do have an interest in joining a community garden, if you don't have space to grow a garden at home, there's tons of resources for you to get started gardening. I know it's a little tangential to what we're talking about today in terms of waste-free cooking, but because I mentioned it earlier, there are tons of community gardens that are still open right now. If you go to marionpolkfoodshare.org, you can see there's a programs tab, and it will lead you to community gardens. And you can click Find a Garden, and there's lots of gardens in our community that are available for a plot rental, so you can choose a spot that's close to your home, and that will be easy for you to go to, and you can garden that way. And that would be, again, another wonderful way for you to get more fresh vegetables in your diet, and also hopefully reduce the waste that you have in the kitchen. Okay, this is getting ready to flip. It's a big pancake, it's going to be hard to flip. Okay, here we go. Nice. Okay, so that'll just take a few more seconds to cook. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you feel inspired to prepare some wonderful meals in your kitchen and to waste as little food as possible. Don't forget to compost if you have to. I wish you could smell it. It smells delicious. Here's what it looks like. Banana pancakes. If you're feeling crazy, you could throw in some nuts or some coconut or some chocolate chips if you're really getting excited about it. So thanks for watching, and good luck. Stay safe, everybody, and hope to hear about all of your exciting recipes and ideas for wasting as little as possible in your kitchens. Thank you.